Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Blokes podcast. Today, Dead Duck and I will be discussing Men's Mental Health Month, the encouraging amount of attention to it this year, the impact of social media on men and boys, as well as the recent ups and downs in the popular discussion of the topic. Pull up a stump and join us. It's good to be back. Dead Duck, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. You know me. Just a long day at work.
Now,
It's been a while. It has been a
yeah,
it has been a hot minute, hasn't it?
it sure has. Sure
Can't remember the
has.
last time we did one of these. It was certainly post my surgery.
Yeah, I think one.
It would have been, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
one or two episodes.
Yeah.
And glorious title, but I think I would have probably gone for Women, Bears, and Other Woodland Scatology. But you know, oh
No,
dear,
we'll.
social media. I mean, it's funny actually because TikTok has decided to ban a men's mental health hashtag, which was men's mental health matters. For some reason, they banned that outright. That unfortunately, we're still seeing some of the same old tired rhetoric about men's mental health. Oh, if men just went to counselling, everything would be better. Yeah, really. I've seen stuff like misandry doesn't exist. Misandry just learns to hurt feelings and various other bits and pieces. I mean, obviously, you've seen the videos that I make on TikTok. So, yeah, obviously, it's good the attention that's being given to Men's Mental Health Month. I just don't know if all of it is entirely positive. And I'm not really a big believer in, any publicity is good publicity. I don't think that's the case at all. But yeah, the conversations around men's mental health is important to have, obviously. I mean, good God, we lose so many in the course of a year. We'll lose so many by the time we finish this podcast, which is food for thought, certainly.
Mm,
So yeah, I'll let you have a say, and
all right.
we'll try and work it all out from here.
All right. Thank you. Um, yeah. Uh, it's as far as the social media thing goes. I worry that nobody is taking a hard look uh, at what it's doing to people in general, other than complaining that it's shortening people's attention spans and making them more antisocial. And it's like they're the only serious research that I've seen on it basically comes to that conclusion and says it's bad, for everybody. I'm like, well, okay, so now we do what? As far as how it impacts boys and men, I firmly believe that uh it's probably already had more negative impact on our ability to, I don't know, I guess, even feel and perceive that we matter, right?
Mm,
Because the few examples of any notoriety who insist that men matter, they just contend that we matter for all the wrong reason, you
mm,
know, and that they buy fully into the idea, that we are valuable, but only because of what we contribute.
yeah.
That it just that old trope. We have no innate value. Our value rises, directly in proportion with our willingness to sacrifice and pull the plow and protect and provide and be stoic and
Mm,
and be the stabilizing influence. And I'm like, A, we're not doing very well at that right now, and B, if that means we have no value at all, or that we don't have as much value, I keep asking, who is going to do what about that?
mm,
Uh, and I've been paying some kind of uncomfortable attention to a guy named uh, Andrew Wilson, who He does a YouTube channel called the Crucible. He also makes himself known on places like the Whatever podcast and has debates with another channel called Wick TV and
Yeah.
occasionally crosses swords with uh, uh, streamers like Not So Erudite. But he is, or claims to be, or claims to uh, hold to a Christian, strictly and clearly patriarchal social structure, right?
Mm,
For to in order to maintain society. He won't just actually come out and say he himself is an actual believing Christian. He kind of gives the vibe that he's what they call a cultural Christian. And he
mm,
doesn't necessarily believe, but he thinks that people ought to, kind of like what Jordan Peterson sometimes does. People ought to act as if there is a God, a guy in the sky, a
mm,
creative intelligence that we must all answer to at some point. Because otherwise we're bereft and savage. If we don't have
mm,
that, right? And so, but this guy Wilson, I mean, one thing that he brings up pretty frequently regarding the more contentious nature of the relationship between men and women these days is that if collectively and as a group men decide to withdraw all of our or all of the rights and privileges and advantages that he believes men have granted women. His point is, who would stop us? You know,
other
it's like,
men.
well, no, he's saying if this is hypothetical, it's like
Yeah.
if collectively there were no other men. In other words, if all of us decided to do that, who would stop us?
Mm,
You know. Now, I only bring that up because when I talk about things being very bad right now, but apparently not quite bad enough, right? That's what
yeah.
I'm talking about, right? That's the kind of this is if there is a thing to be avoided at all costs, it's that,
Yeah.
right? Because if we go down that road, I mean, again, he brings it up hypothetically, and I am not afraid to bring it up hypothetically. But by him, that concept is not off the table. My
Mm,
perspective is currently it is still off the table. Let's keep it there. You know,
yeah.
this there no good comes from that line of thinking and that line of reason.
No.
And so if people are looking for a reason to impart to men just innate inborn intrinsic value over and above anything that they may or may not be able or willing to contribute, if there's a motivation to do that, right? The
Mm,
motivation is keeping that kind of thing off the table.
yeah.
Keeping
Yeah.
it out of the discussion. Because
Yeah. I've seen an awful lot of them.
right now, him and those, unfortunately, those like him, they're getting attention, right?
Yeah.
And they are not afraid to bring up that idea,
Mm,
as an or else, right? And
yeah. I,
like I said, I don't, I'm trying to get out of this world without that ever happening.
yeah.
you know?
I, I've seen various videos with him, and I've seen him use that argument in a couple of different ways. One way he does use it is to try and point out the fact that we don't live in a patriarchy, because if we did, that would be the outcome. But unfortunately, the people he's arguing with the situations with, for the most part, we've spoken about it before. They're barely out of school, half of them.
Yeah, I mean, he's not,
They've only,
he's punching way, way below his weight,
yeah,
and when a few times that I've seen him, kind of pick on somebody his own intellectual size, like I said, he doesn't like completely embarrass himself, but it does
Mm.
devolve into a screaming match anyway. So he's
Yeah.
kind of, it like it's no longer, worth taking seriously. And there's a reason for that. It's like
Yeah.
the overriding interest, you know, is not only because, he pushes that behind the only important thing to do is, reproduce and perpetuate the species, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, no, that is not the only important thing to do, because if you perpetuate the species, into uh, perpetual and unlivable misery, what have you accomplished? You
Mm.
know, you've birthed a whole, series of generations of children, into misery and poverty and, like deprivation and fear.
Mm.
I mean, human beings spent a long time under those conditions, right? It's like life was, like Wittgenstein said, solitary, you know, brutish, nasty, dark, and short.
Mm.
We worked very hard to not have to live that way anymore.
Yeah.
Going, taking on that project as a future rebirth of the culture, it's a non-starter. For one thing,
Yeah.
nobody's going to go along with, even if they are miserable, right? And
Mm.
they are, but even if they are miserable, they're not going to buy that bag of crap,
No.
And for another thing, like I said, we've become used to and conditioned, and maybe even epigenetically evolved to live this way,
Mm.
the way we're living, and
Yeah.
to just like abruptly go back to the bad old days, I don't think we would make it. I don't. I think we would either, just go out of the picture altogether, or we would end up being some kind of, socially mutated, uh, like I say, culture run by the people that we currently keep in high security prison.
Yeah.
Because people like that would flourish under those conditions. They really would. I mean, it
Mm.
would be great, but people like us would be gone.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't be here. So
Mm.
it's like forget all that. It's not a solution. And
Yeah.
again, you know me, I fully admit that, my brand of solution, my alternative, like I said, it's ambitious. It would be costly,
Mm.
in real wealth over time, right?
Yeah.
And maybe a little utopian. I don't know, but the fact is that, it's still more like how people are now and how they want to be
Yeah.
than, like I say, than a strictly structured patriarchy. The closest we
Mm.
come are some cultures, you know, in uh, in Mid East and Eastern uh, civilizations, the countries, cultures.
Mm.
But the thing is, that they, they those cultures, to a great degree, still depend on the culture that we have. You
Mm.
know, without our culture being in place, it's very difficult for those patriarchies to really, maintain themselves, because I mean, they started as client states of the
Mm.
West, and in trade and uh, what little cultural advancement they're willing to accept comes from us.
Mm.
It comes in large measure, it comes from either, over here on this side of the pond or over there where you are.
Mm.
I mean, especially lately, people have begun to really lose faith in, continental Europe, right? Because they seem to be, I don't know, they're having their own problems, but
Yeah.
uh, culturally, we're uh, we're still being looked to,
Yeah.
and to be honest with you, if anything, maybe we ought to tell those people, don't follow us. We don't know what the hell we're doing. I mean, just be brave and say, you know what, we're like really appreciative and flattered that you look to us for economic models and political models and cultural models sometimes, but maybe don't do that because we're not doing too good right now. You know,
Yeah,
if you have your like seventh century patriarchy up and running, who are we to say? You know,
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't look good to us, but what the hell do we know?
yeah,
You know,
yeah. One thing I have been trying to get across, because I mean, obviously, you would have heard of things like "it's all men,"
sure,
you know, "kill
sure,
all men," and all this other stuff. Is
sure.
just how dangerous that kind of rhetoric is,
It is,
and
and
you know,
well, well, go ahead,
it's
go
not
ahead.
Germany thinking. That's what it is. The consequences, as of yet, have not been that severe,
No,
but the thinking is exactly the same.
yeah, conditioning.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah, it's cultural conditioning. And when I again talk to the people who are, like a lot less concerned with the impact of such things, and what they will tell me is, these are either appeals to or a test of men's ability to empathize. Now, and I always grant that as a demographic, we're a little ham-fisted about empathy. Okay. Now, this, of course, present company accepted, you're an empathetic
mm,
cat, and so am I, but on the whole, I have been in the company over time with men who I believe they have that wiring.
mm,
They're not very good at executing it, especially with each other, right?
mm,
You know, and with women, some of us, like I said, we've just got this clumsy and kind of undeveloped ability to recognize and uh, compare our experiences with the feelings of women.
mm,
Now, from my point of view, men are getting to the place where it is in their own best interest to do a better job with it, but only for their own best interest. I mean, my overall view on this is, neutral corners for everybody until we get this crap worked out, right?
mm.
No, just no more fraternizing, you know, but at least not the way we normally do. And that gives one a motivation to really get good at things, you know,
Yeah,
them and us. But the wall that I run into, and I do it kind of subtle, because I don't want to raise any alarm bells. The wall that I run into is that we are not good. We men are not good at really being empathetic with each other or with anybody else. And so, we have never, not very many of us have ever demonstrated how to do that with us. You and I have
mm,
had the discussion before about, the kind of conversations that parents have with their daughters as compared to the conversations that they have with their sons,
mm,
right? And that the conversation with the son is all around uh, uh, developing and maintaining, good treatment of women and girls, right? And the conversations with girls being raised to be women is, how to avoid having trouble with men and boys, right? But there's not a discussion about what they may need from you or what they may want from you other than sex.
mm.
Now here just lately, there's been a few, I don't know, kind of like uh angry rants about what men and boys want and need other than from women other than sex, like peace and
Yeah,
understanding, and some compassion for ourselves, some
mm,
patience with us, you know. And it's like sometimes you just get deer in the headlight, It's like
yeah,
it didn't even occur that that might be an issue. And there's a reason for that because nobody ever told them.
Yeah.
I cannot count how many times in uh having discussions with the women that I have these discussions with about, just what it's been like for me, right?
Mm.
And what it's been like for the men that I know, and it's kind of, it's this revelation to them over and over again. I never heard that before. I never thought of it that way. Nobody, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And I said, well, because they were busy telling you not to turn your back on us, and to
Mm.
treat us like, I'd say at best to treat us like, interesting exotic wildlife, right? That's entirely feral and cannot be trusted,
Yeah.
but like fun to look at. And
Mm.
I'm like, that's not what we are, you know. Maybe there was a time when that's all we were. I don't know. I wasn't there,
No.
But as we are right now, we are not that, And if you treat us like that, the trouble is we will conform to that treatment, or we will be like you and I and just rebel,
Mm.
and say, no, we are not that, and
Yeah.
then we get called misogynist and told to shut up,
Yeah.
like that. You guys are asking why there's no progress here. That's why.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated.
No, it isn't. I mean, I suppose I must be a rare one because I've taught my son and my daughter the same lessons. So, you know, and I'm very, very fortunate in that I have peace in my home life, you know,
Right,
for
but
all
yeah,
for all my partner's steadiness, shall we say,
right.
and as her slightly off the wall sense of humor. I do get an awful lot of peace.
Yeah,
Other than when I hurt myself, of course, in which case I get nagged half to death. But
that was inevitable, though.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I did a good job on that one. So she may be right to nag a bit. But
maybe.
uh, going back to the whole social media thing, I've seen these women who are claiming to be dating gurus, and they're saying men who want peace are a red flag. Think about the inherent toxicity in that statement.
Right,
Somebody
right.
who doesn't want a toxic relationship, who just wants things to be peaceful,
It's
whilst
a red
understanding
flag.
that occasionally there's going to be conflict. They're the red flag.
Yeah, yeah,
But somebody who wants World War III
right,
every time they come home is apparently a green flag to these people. It's like,
right.
where do you get this stuff from?
Now, in fairness, okay,
You know,
I know people, who thrive and do well with contentious relationships. Um, but those are a very rare breed, because they enjoy it and they have a sense of humor about it and they understand the limits of it very clearly. What those dating gurus are talking about is not that. It's just home life should be bedlam.
mm.
You know?
I've been in what could be best described as a contentious relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun. It really is not fun. It's not something I'd recommend to anyone.
No,
You know,
no.
the
But
old
it,
trope of sitting out in the car for 15, 20 minutes when you get home from work to try and decompress because when you walk through the door, you're just going to be hit with a tsunami.
yep, yep.
And,
Uh, Been
you
there.
know, and yes, I can understand to a certain degree, particularly when you've got young children, because, the
Right?
children are running riot, the house is a mess, blah, 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 blah. But by the same token, it shouldn't be like that.
No.
It really, that there's a way of making the point that you need something like some actual physical support, not getting into a screaming match or worse,
Mm,
because I've been there, done that, and got that particular t-shirt.
yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and as men, is it really that much for us to ask when we come home from a 15-hour shift or more?
Mm,
You done a near 20-hour day. All you want is your food, go to the bathroom, and go to bed.
right. Right.
Is that really so much for us to ask? And I've said people have said to me, and I'm sure you probably heard it as well. When it comes to your mental health, how much of a difference would it have made in times of mental turmoil to just have that place of peace?
Well, you having experienced both, you have it's like you have a scale of comparison,
Yeah,
right?
I don't.
One is, one is favorable, one is intolerable. So
Yeah.
that's an easy call to make, right?
Mm,
Now, and for myself, I guess I could say I had a little bit of both, but uh, my situation was different because of me,
mm,
and the truth is, there are too many people now like I was,
mm,
and there are too many people now like my wife was, maybe still is, I don't know. And it isn't what we were doing, because we weren't, a contentious household in any case.
yeah.
But it's more about what we weren't doing, and I had somebody who was really kind of old school and not very thoughtful point out that, well, things would have been different if you had kids, right? That old trope of, if you want to save your marriage, have kids, right?
Mm,
Give you gives you something else to focus on. I'm like, again, as far as it goes, that's a theory, but you're gambling on not only your own well-being, but the well-being of human beings that you haven't even made yet, and I'm like, those stakes are too high,
mm,
and uh the idea that you resolve uh an unstable household and an unstable marriage by introducing, more chaos and more instability doesn't make sense to me.
mm.
Just because it's different chaos, I don't buy the idea that it makes it any better.
No.
You know, I mean, if anything, it makes it more challenging. The research says that, women in particular that, don't have children tend to be happier.
Mm,
And I know that seems to fly in the face of a lot of uh, old wisdom, but I don't know. The way I look at it, that isn't because of the children. It's just because of how things are now,
mm,
and that if things were different and better, then they would be happy with or without children,
mm.
or at least happier, right?
Yeah.
And
There are
you know,
various studies, aren't there, that show women's overall happiness is somewhere in the gutter,
right,
particularly in the
and
West.
yeah, and understandably so, from their perspective, collectively, we are disappointing them. We are falling short of what they need and desire in order to be content. To which I
Mm,
say, you made us. Just say, I don't know.
mm,
That's that might be true, but at least, at least 50% of the reason. I say more, but that's me.
mm,
And then it just becomes a spiraling, escalation of argument whereby, if men were more involved as fathers, then, there wouldn't be so much burden of nurturing and upbringing on women. And of course, the answer to that is, well, then it would be a good idea to have us fathers be involved, don't you think?
yeah.
Instead of trying to run us all out of the house and, grab our wallet on the way out, right?
Mm,
But it's like at some point, somebody like me, it just says, all right, enough, everybody's cut off, everybody go to your room, right? And you go ahead and you can come back out when you decide to act like human,
mm,
and not before. But I can't. It's like if I could think of another way, I would. I mean, I don't see a solution, in I don't see a solution in social media in general, because it if it it's a continuously swinging door that always swings both ways. And
Mm,
I see too many people exploiting that for their own personal gain.
yeah.
You know? Like I said, even now, I don't know if you know this, but the fresh and fit contingent is that it's still going,
Yeah, I know.
it's,
I mean,
and
they've
the
dropped
whatever,
another faux pas, haven't they, in the last week or
yeah,
so?
yeah.
Aber and
I mean,
Preach.
yeah, just despite their best effort, they're still going,
Yeah,
Um, and like I say, Brian and company over at whatever podcast, they're a going concern. And when I say that,
mm,
when you hear the term going concern, that means profitable business.
yeah,
They are incentivized to keep this whole thing running for as long as humanly possible, and they are
yeah,
disincentivized to do anything to resolve it
yeah,
because there's no money in it.
yeah. Well,
You know?
see, I wonder the if the OnlyFans bubble burst tomorrow, would that bring about the end of things like the Whatever podcast? Because he'd have nobody on, he'd have no guests.
Well, or
You know?
he would have to harvest them from places like Instagram and more, anodyne and less risque sources. But remember, if they shut down OnlyFans, those would just migrate over to places like
Other-
Instagram uh,
Yeah,
and for the
I
ones
was.
that are very um motivated toward sexual commerce, Pornhub's
Yeah,
doing fine, you know
yeah.
um
They say it's the oldest profession for a reason, don't they? But
right.
I
I mean,
part of
one
my
way or
hope.
another,
Yeah,
getting OnlyFans off the internet resolves nothing.
no.
you know
I think my hope there is that he would be forced to have on the likes of Alison Tiemann or Elizabeth Hobson or Karen Strawn, properly formidable women.
Janice Fiamengo, you know,
Yeah,
but those would be, and he does do this, occasionally. Those would be those kind of like more serious discussions,
mm,
that don't like, entertain the mob.
yeah,
Um, but even at that, I mean, say he had uh, Janice and Karen and Allison, across from himself and Andrew and that other dude's name that pops up occasionally. I
yeah,
forget who he is, but they're going to be having this kind of discussion where, especially Karen and Allison aren't going to be letting them get away with um, this traditional view of men.
mm,
The one thing about the OnlyFans models is, their men are sort of they're unfamiliar territory to them.
mm,
Like how we really are, they have no idea, right? Which
mm,
is why, they're so easy to mock and dismiss because they don't know.
mm,
I mean, what if one of these OnlyFans models that those guys have on, interminably, what if they ever just sat down and talked to you and I, you know? I mean, what that would sound like and what it would look like. Because I am not going to sit back and try to make this person look stupid, and I am not going to sit back and, just debunk them. All I'm going to do is say, here's what my life has been like. Here's what it's been like for the men that I know,
mm,
and here's what it's been like for the men that raised me and that were in my communities and all of that. And what you're telling me doesn't have very much to do with that.
mm,
Now, if your experience of men is different, let's hear it, right? It's like they never just, like Brian and those guys, they never just sit down and say, look, your overall experience with men. right? And boys, you know,
mm,
just sit back and tell us what it's been like, because from what you're, spouting, you're talking about aliens,
mm,
men are not like that,
yeah,
and thinking that we are, is why you have to do what you do, in order to get along in the world. And it's like,
mm,
and I would be brave enough to say, if you're satisfied with that, don't stop on my account, and I'm dead serious when I say that,
mm,
do not stop, don't change a thing. The only thing I'm asking is that you come away from here with a little bigger perspective on your client base than you have right now.
mm,
Because, this is really kind of whole thing is kind of looking like a short-term business model that's gonna, your client base is gonna turn on you if you're not careful, right?
yeah.
You don't
You know,
really know who you are, huh?
yeah. Once somebody prettier and more open-minded comes along, you're
Sure.
yesterday's news.
Sure.
You know.
Sure. Yeah, because you limit your offering to just this one thing,
Mm,
and that men ask for it, Um, I said it doesn't make, just a supply and a demand. Unfortunately, it doesn't make a market,
mm,
I wish it did, right? Because then everything would be just running like a Rolex, and no, you would never hear anyone complain. There would be
yeah.
a supply, and if there was more demand, prices go up.
Mm,
If there's a demand and there's too much supply, prices go down.
yeah.
That is the way it is. But
Yeah.
if you don't know the people that you're uh here, if you don't know the people you're buying from, if the buyers don't know who's doing the selling, who they really are,
Mm,
then, at best you don't have a real market. What you've got is I don't know, some kind of perverted bazaar, street
mm,
market. Here in my neck of the woods, there's a place called Maxwell Street in Chicago, and it's, notorious for things like really good food and, really interesting presentations and street art and performance, and a lot of people playing three-card Monte and shell games and every other kind of street hustle there is. you know
mm.
so, but I mean, everybody understands that's Maxwell Street. It's part of the charm, but don't go there with a full wallet, right? you know uh, but uh this things like OnlyFans really, or most of the industrial adult entertainment, porn, whatever you want to call it, there's a mutual ignorance in that market. The buyers do not really know the sellers. The sellers really do not know the buyers.
Yeah. I had, I'd say, an interesting conversation. A
Mhm.
conversation with a girl on TikTok who was a sex worker, and we were having the whole body count discussion. And I said to her, "Look, for me, in my 40s, doesn't matter at all, because any woman I'm going to be romantically interested in, stay away from the fact that for a minute I'm in a relationship. So any woman that I would potentially be romantically interested in is going to be older. I don't want to do babysitting, thank you. I've raised two children. I don't need to be involved with another one. Thank you very much." But I then told to her, "Look, it's not me we're talking about. It's my son. And, you know, should he have to be involved with a young woman his age who has maybe slept with 15, 20, 30 people? No. Should she have to deal with people who've slept with that many people? No." And that's the inconvenient part that the likes of whatever leave out. They always talk about female promiscuity. They don't talk about it with men. And,
No, no.
I'm measured enough. I said to my son, "Look, if you find a girl that's like that, then just have the fun bit. You don't want to get yourself into a relationship with that, because you're always going to be asking yourself questions,
Yeah.
and that's going to do you no good at all in the long run." It's one of the myriad of reasons I would never have taken my ex back, because I would forever be asking myself questions about what she's doing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, you kind of
Yeah.
enjoy the luxury of having one of each. So
Mm,
you see the wisdom of presenting that to your daughter as well, because
mm,
as I've never been female, but by all accounts, the ones that struggle with, at least intimacy with men long term, that they all seem to want so badly, is that, it leaves them with questions too, not
mm,
just about what they're doing or, you know, what they have done and how she measures up, but, just the overall, again, this is more of a feeling, I guess, or intuition that, a man who has been really promiscuous and, uh, mindlessly promiscuous, right, is going to have a harder time seeing her as a whole human being,
mm,
and it's like, I'm sure you feel like your daughter needs to know that too, and that you uh you hate it's like you don't want to leave anybody without a path to redemption, um
mm,
and everybody really is different, but it's got to be part of the vetting process.
mm,
I was telling somebody else, I won't name names, but I was telling somebody else who is the mother of a son, about this whole idea, of I think, it's kind of crude, but vetting, the person that you intend to have a relationship with. And even,
mm,
even the idea of uh having, having one category of interactions where there won't be a relationship, there's only going to be the fun bit, and then
mm,
another category of, you know, uh, in this case, girls, women, who are possibly marriage material, and
mm,
it's like, for one thing, given the right, given world enough and time, like anybody can end up being marriage material, right? I will say in concept, even I am marriage material. Now,
mm.
but I will ask you, what are the chances you think of me ever getting married again?
Nil.
Right. And, that's as much for everybody else's benefit as my own,
Mm,
right? I'm a handful,
mm,
I just am, right? And I'm as is, no warranty, right?
mm,
All sales final, right? Because I've done as much changing and growing and healing really as I can. Now,
mm.
what I do now is really maintenance. It's
Yeah.
keeping it all neatly wrapped and tucked away. The fact is, I've had people, ask me about, do I ever think about getting back in the saddle? And it's like, yeah, I do. I said, well, wouldn't don't you want to? Yeah, I do. But I understand, the potential risks to myself. I also
Mm,
understand the potential risks to the other, to this hypothetical partner, right?
yeah.
What would they have to, it's like at minimum, they would have that person would have to have a demonstrated track record of their concern, and overall support of people like me.
Mm,
In other words, that needs to have already happened, right?
yeah.
Before I set eyes on them. The other thing
Mm,
is that, they have to have a demonstrated track record of what they have done along with other women and just other people to help make that happen.
mm,
Because I'm like, at this point, what else are we going to talk about? I don't have no hobbies, man. I don't care about
yeah.
sports, right? And I don't like you. I don't dig cars that much, and I don't go train spotting, right? The stuff I
Well,
just don't
to
do
be
that.
fair, you are in America. You don't have trains over there. Not really.
Not really, no. I was watching that fellow, what's his name? Richard Bourgeoisie, the TikToker, the Kid That Loves Trains on
Hmm.
TikTok. But you guys got some cool trains over there. I gotta
Well,
say
the stuff
that.
out on the continent's better. Stuff out on the continent's better.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen some of his stuff over there too.
Mm.
Um, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
I do.
like, even myself, I'm certainly not above admitting that that my well-being would improve, right? And, you know, uh, it might even, help me maintain my, my healing and state of mind and heart. The thing is, a lot comes with it,
Mm,
right? You know, I'm not rich, by any means at all. I'm working class, right?
mm,
And in America, working class is holding on by your fingernail, you know,
yeah,
at least right now. Um, and besides that, you know, I would it would be the kind of person, that I could look in the eye and say, "Hey, sweetheart, my appointment is tomorrow. I'm going to go, spend an hour in the arms of a very attractive young woman. I'll see you when I get back and have her be okay with that.
yeah,
You know, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That's it. I mean, I've got enough, like, I guess empathy and compassion to say that might be a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
they might not just be like okey dokey with that, right?
yeah. That would take a very secure woman, wouldn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, the reality would be that, that work, which is what it is, would
Mm,
improve, you know, how I'm able to connect with this partner. But how is she going to see that?
mm,
You know? I mean, honest question, how would anyone be able to just put up with that long term and
yeah,
never wonder, why does he need this? Am I not enough? You know, should, should I go take the courses and learn how to do what that woman's doing?
mm,
Which that it doesn't work that way. It's got to be a
no,
disinterested third party. It just
mm,
has to. That
yeah.
sounds messed up. I mean, it really does. And saying it out loud is a little disquieting, but that's what it is. It's somebody that can make it all about me for one whole hour,
Mm,
and then give me a quick hug and say, see you next week
yeah.
and
I,
be okay.
I suppose the argument on that one would possibly be that if the relationship was that good, that you then wouldn't need to continue with the therapy.
That would be a hope,
Mm.
you know. It would. I mean,
So then,
I would like to think it's like here's my ego for a second. I would like to think that with the right woman, there would quickly come a time where I did not need to do that kind of work anymore,
mm,
you know. But I got to be honest with you, man. That really does sound like me bragging. Maybe, I mean, hell, maybe I could pull it off. Maybe I could just
yeah,
bid the fond farewell and, even continue doing the volunteer work for the greater good or whatever. But,
mm,
I mean, it would change a lot of things that um that I acquired when I was en route to finding a reason to stay alive,
yeah,
and then to transfer all of that onto another person. Could you imagine looking your partner in the eye and saying, I hope you understand that you are currently responsible for the fact that I don't jump off a bridge,
mm.
you know, because this is
I
what I
think
have to tell these people, you know.
I think in the right relationship though, that's kind of a given. You know, there's been times where, I've had to deal, say had to deal
Mm,
with Louise, also my partner, being
yeah,
in a bad place
yeah,
and her not being in a bad place anymore is purely contingent on my reaction to it
sure.
and what I do.
Sure. No, that
The
that's
actions
that,
of,
that's the reason. Well, that's a big reason to partner up is so that
Mm.
you can do that for each other.
Yeah.
But it's contingent on the idea that you take her from, that dark place and walk with her out of it.
Mm.
And there's like, well, now we're out of it. And then a short while later, it'll probably be your turn.
Mm. Yeah.
But with me, like I said, this is it's one of the scars I think maybe won't ever heal. I
Possibly.
have to, I have to have, how do I say this? I have to have reasons. I have to have things to look at and people to think about, even in the best of times,
Mm.
just to keep rolling.
Mm.
And for me, not rolling anymore, is, I mean, it's a very long fall to go back there. The trouble is that it won't be very immediate. I tell
Mm.
people that I do this so I don't like jump off a bridge, but that's not really quite it. You know, it would be a fall, but it would be long and slow and painful. And to most people watching me, it would be imperceptible until the
Mm.
end, until it got
Yeah.
really bad, you know. And by that time, it would be just like last time. People would just walk away, right? I don't want no more to do with you, because that's just, that's the kind of person I am, and I wish that I was a one-off, you know.
Mm.
But unfortunately, I'm not. It's like,
No.
um, when I spend time with the men in my group, the topic of like why we got better,
Mm.
comes up. I mean, obviously it comes up a lot, and one of them in the last session here last Sunday, I guess he got his feathers ruffled up a little bit because somebody with good intentions but kind of ignorant, was questioning, like, what, when are you done healing? When are you done with this work? Because he's been on it, and he's like me, he's a veteran. It's like both of us coming on about 10 years, which is
Mm.
a long time, in fairness.
Mm.
And it's like it doesn't really work that way, you know. And the people that, uh, when this guy talks about his wife, he reminds me a lot of yours, just how they are, right?
Mm.
And it's like some can handle it, and there are men, with who are partners of women who have been through what I've been through, in different ways, what you've been through, right?
Mm.
And those men are able to, stand in that breach and, be that kind of person ongoing,
Mm. Mm.
indefinite, like year over year, and they like it, you know.
Mm.
I mean, I get the feeling that, your partner likes how things are, you know,
Yeah.
kind of bumps and all, right? Not everybody's like that, you know.
Mm.
Somebody like me or my friend in the group, probably in a lot of cases, you scared the hell out of a lot of women,
Mm.
rightfully so. We are a handful. In this day and age, we are a handful. Yes, we
Yeah.
come with, a lot of really uh, useful and versatile attributes. We're not perfect,
No.
you know.
Nobody is.
No, and the process of, like, at least for me, the process of uh, making that kind of connection and commitment to somebody,
Mm.
very difficult for me to be objective. You
Mm.
know, it's hard for me to vet such a person because one
Yeah.
of the one of the permanent scars is, the uh that real kind of like primal reaction to, positive attention.
Mm.
It's just that comes with the outfit.
Yeah.
I work my ass off to, to kind of counterbalance it, and be objective and be careful,
Mm.
right? But you won't catch me on a dating app, tell you that.
I wouldn't go on a dating app if you paid me. Oh,
And
they,
it wouldn't,
they're horrific.
they are. They're, again, that's a business model. They are invested in the idea that people fail to get together. If they start
Mm,
getting people together successfully, they go out of business.
yeah.
you know, but I mean, for my part, it wouldn't be the vast number of rejections. It'd be
Mm,
what happens after somebody accepts.
yeah.
You know, sucks to be
Yeah.
me, I guess. A little bit, you know.
Mm, mm.
But,
On the boys' mental health thing,
mhm.
I posted a video up yesterday on TikTok, which was a stitch, and it was all this noise in the background saying different negative things about men. And I posited the scenario to people. Put yourself in the position of a 12-year-old boy who's listening to all of that noise, spending time on social media, and eventually they start to hear it in school, in particular from the girls. And what happens when the boy can't take any more? And this was the point I made. I was aiming this at the feminists. If that boy takes himself out of the game,
Right.
are you going to stand there at his graveside and tell his parents you meant every single word of it? And
Yeah.
the other bit I put in there is if you are of a religious bent,
Hmm.
are you going to stand before your deity and
Right.
tell them that you meant every single word of it?
Right.
Because
And
if that's the case, you've got some serious issues to go and work on. Let's be honest here.
well, and like I'm trying to look up the comments on that TikTok because I watched it, and while I was listening to you talk, I was thinking to myself, here is one of the here's one of Dead Duck's postings that is it may be commented on, but it probably won't be responded to. In other words, nobody from the other side is going to jump on and give you a yes or no answer. You
Mm,
know, they're not going to do that, right? Even if they could back it up, which they can't, but
no.
they like some of them will say some stuff that will have nothing to do with your question,
Mm,
and because then they will have said some stuff on your TikTok because that's what they do, say some
mm,
stuff, you know. But in terms of just a straight up yes or no answer, and here's why, they're not
mm,
going to do that. They have no reason to, right? And instead, they'll muddy the waters, they'll deflect, they'll deny that that was ever an issue, even though right behind you, on the TikTok clip, you had like dozens and dozens of instances of just that very thing happening. you
mm.
know it's like this is the emperor's new clothes. I don't know, like, are you able to see that that clip on TikTok and see if anybody's commented?
I can get it up. I don't know if it'll play havoc with this, but we'll try.
Okay, I'm just wondering here. Why can't? Oh, here you go. Here you are.
There we are.
Yeah. Is that the one with the thumbnail of the young man in glasses? Yeah,
Yeah.
men are the problem, or man are the bear is. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. This is it. Let's see. There's now 37 comments.
Yeah, I know there's a couple of big arguments in there.
Yeah. See, where are all the women out there committing mass killings of men? That's not the question you asked, or that does not answer the question you asked. You
Mm,
as for the male suicide rate, it's women begging men to please go to therapy. And that's another thing here in Men's Mental Health Month. Um,
oh,
you know, you have heard me say before that men's mental health is something that not enough men put enough focus on,
mm,
and even with everything that I've been through and everything that I've seen, um, I guess this is a result of me spending a lot of time around very mature, very level-headed, and compassionate women. But I'm not willing to throw women under that bus anymore. The ones that of supposedly discouraging men from seeking mental health support, because because they think it's weak or whatever, or they'll use it against us. I do see examples of it,
Yeah, I've lived
but
through it.
right. But by and large, again, my response to that is, those women and girls like that are worthy of abandonment. They ought to be left
Mm,
alone, like entirely
mm,
alone. If that is the best they can do, they need to be away from men and boys.
yeah.
They shouldn't have sons, right? They shouldn't have
No.
boyfriends or, you know, partners or husbands. Basically,
Mm,
they should have nothing.
mm,
I mean, they can go get a job, hopefully without any men around, because
mm,
they're too dangerous. They cause too much trouble over too much time.
mm,
But my experience is there really aren't that many of them. All they are is loud and active.
mm,
I spend most of my time encouraging these more mature and level-headed and clear thinking women to be more active and to get a little bit
mm.
loud. You know, go ahead and just say all that with your chest. It's like, because you're right. you know.
Yeah. You see, the problem is, right, this whole men going to therapy thing is a very nice flawed it and a very nice, what's the word I'm looking for? It feels warm and gooey when you say it. You want men to get help, you want men to get therapy.
It's not warm and gooey when I say it. But yeah,
But
I get the idea. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, but what they want you to do, or what these women really mean is they want you to do it like women do it.
Yes.
And we have had so many conversations, haven't we, down what,
Mhm.
the year and a bit, 2 years now that we've been doing this,
Yeah.
where we've said the only thing that's really going to work for men's mental health
Yeah.
at this point in time is tailor-made solutions just for men.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you heard I mean, you obviously know about the scouts, don't you? The Boy
Yeah.
Scouts.
Yeah. Are just now the scouts. Yeah.
Yeah, which maybe we'll cover the whole man versus bear thing very shortly as well, because that's part
I
of it.
know. I know you want to get into
Yeah.
it.
And you've also then had the Garrick Club in London, which has been threatened with being sued to within an inch of its life if they
Right.
don't accept women.
Right.
Again, this falls into the whole man versus bear argument as well.
Right. Hmm.
But I firmly believe, and I've said this for several years now, I reckon we can trace the deterioration in men's mental health and the increase in suicide rates to the eradication of men's only spaces.
I think it's a huge contributor, because it's like what I hear, uh, whether it's older guys like us in my men's mental health group, certainly from NCFM, certainly from the even the well-read and well-considered uh, uh, manosphere, is that we don't have anywhere to turn, an because we're guys, we believe in inst- institutions of our own, and
Mm,
like rights of, I don't know, progress, and rights of uh, inclusion. I mean, like, more uh, indigenous cultures believed very strongly, in rites of passage for boys to become men. They just kind of took it and ran off the edge of the earth with it.
mm,
And the quote civilized world perverted those institutions by you know making that exclusion something to gain things like power and wealth and influence with. but a real like workable men's space is not going to do either one of those things.
Mm.
It's not going to be, just tests of strength and endurance and acceptance of pain, and on the other hand, it's not just going to be a networking lever, to get a promotion or get elected, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's our men's responsibility to demonstrate that we can create spaces for ourselves, that don't involve any of that, right?
Men shed.
And things like men's sheds, things like the growing number of mutual support groups, among men that are exclusive to
Wiped
men.
out.
Well, not anymore.
No,
you
but
know.
it was another example, wasn't it? You know, it was another example. I'm sure you were in the scouts as a youngster, and
Well, my
I
brother
most
was,
certainly
but
was.
you know, but
And there was none of this.
most guys I know that have, some measure of uh maturity and stability in adulthood, we're either part of the scouts or something like it,
Yeah.
and well, what I've been talking about, again, around these other campfires is that not allowing us, not allowing, discouraging, disincentivizing us from having that kind of, you know, of fraternity,
Mm.
even in adulthood, even in the under the best circumstances. I'm like, think of the most level-headed, well-adjusted dude, right? Of
Mm.
any like gender or sexual expression, and ask yourself, or watch that person and see how they are in the company of just men, right?
Mm.
You know, if they are, uncomfortable, aggressive, withdrawn, unwilling uh, to play their part, so to speak, be themselves. If they are that, if you guys are looking for red flags, that's one of them.
Mm.
That's one of them. And I'm like, you know how I know that? I'm like, how?
Mm.
Because that's who I was. You know, I was. I hated men. You could say I had good reason, maybe, but having a good reason to be hateful is never a good idea. It just isn't.
No, I
And
mean, some people would say Hitler had a good reason to be hateful at the end of the day.
yeah, I mean, but
I
it's
know, I know that sounds like a bit of a stretch, but
not that far, really. I mean, and it's like when I say something like that, you know, it's like it's in the company, mostly women, of people, who are they're talking to me because they're trying to understand me, you know,
mm.
and they're talking to me because, I kind of represent entree into the world of men, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, this is a critical piece of, becoming a man and becoming a man among men,
Mm.
and not being a lone wolf, you know, and not to disparage lone wolves. I mean, a successful lone wolf, is fine, right? But I mean, that's just kind of an end point. It begins and ends with
Mm.
that person. Men flourish most often as part of a continuum.
Mm.
I like being a man among men now, and I behave among men as a man, as a man with other, it's like it's kind of circular, but like there was a time when I wasn't like that. I was among
Mm.
men only. I was a fish out of water, right? And I'm like, if you're looking for men to get better, and if you're looking for boys to get well enough to be good men, find ways to make that happen. You
Mm.
know, find ways to comfortably and confidently, send them out with the boys, right? Because they are going to, because they'll be choosing the right boy, right, the
Mm,
right guy. And hopefully over time there will be fewer of the wrong guy, right? I
yeah.
mean, it's like it's like the whole goal of the project is so that there isn't this enormous and growing mob of males that are unsuited for civilization.
Mm,
I mean, at some point you get like, I know that sounds harsh, but really at the end of the day, that needs to be the plan. Is that we like work those kind of men out of the system.
mm,
Because I mean, otherwise, the only other thing you can do is just round them up and put them in cages like we do over here in the good old U.S. of A. Right?
yeah.
At $50,000 to $80,000 a year per inmate,
Mm,
and that's medium and regular max security. There's places like Pelican Bay and APX, and I don't want to tell you what that costs.
I can imagine.
It's just like the Pentagon crap.
Mm,
It's in fact nobody really knows because it's they're like Erewhon, they're a dark budget.
yeah.
Nobody knows exactly how much, but it's a lot. You know,
Yeah.
but like I say, that it's like that's not a solution.
No.
They have to be they have to be incentivized to try to be good men among good men.
Mm,
Because otherwise we have what we have, and nobody seems to be happy with that.
no.
But instead, and I was watching, again, this is another debate stream, WIC TV, which I've been watching too much of lately, was this, a couple of guys and like three women talking about, the reasons why men's mental health is so precarious right now. And of course, one of the women, at least, was just basically, blaming us, right? Saying it's
Mm,
all our fault. And, I was sitting there thinking that, hopefully what you're saying is not true.
mm,
Hopefully what you're saying is, just wrong. Because if you're not wrong, might as well shut off the lights and go home because we're doomed.
mm,
If really, if our mental health situation is only our own fault, we're not going to make it. But the
yeah.
best possible outcome is that we change and recondition ourselves collectively to the point where we start looking at women and saying, "What do I need you for?" You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want like hundreds of millions of men asking that question. You really
It,
don't.
the problem is that question's starting to be asked, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Quiet. It's
But
very quiet, but it's being
mhm,
asked.
right, and it's quiet, and I want it to get even quieter.
Mm. Yeah.
Because
The whole uh, talk of things like sex robots and things.
right,
You know, it's like, well, what do we need women for?
and then
And also,
Oh, go ahead. What?
artificial wombs and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
What? Once you take away those things, what do you need women for? If you can cook, clean, and
Reproduce.
take care of it, yeah,
Yeah. Well, like I said, those are the kind of discussions that, I would I would rather replace with, a little more level-headed discourse. But
yeah,
and that's like, again, the title and the subject of this debate stream was supposed to be about men's mental health, and not 15 minutes into it, like all the rest of these discussions, it just evolved into you know uh uh like a bar fight over dating issues.
mm,
Like the beginning, middle, and end of all of men's mental health and well-being revolves around whether dating is going well or not. I'm like, man, I wish that was true. You know, life would
yeah,
be so easy. Because then men would do one of the things we're so notorious for, which is act whatever way women want us to act.
mm,
Right? And then women, I guess, would have an easier time not worrying about whether we're crazy or not.
Yeah.
know. But now it's like, yeah, dating is messed up because, women seem to be convincing themselves and each other that we're all a danger, that all men are a danger to themselves and everybody else.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, we're not. We're in a rough spot right now. And, the as you mentioned, the kind of things that we need to get better collectively, we don't have available. They're
Mm.
not there. You mentioned things as straightforward and effective as men's shed. Here in good old US of A, we still don't have any.
Mm.
We don't. And I'm
Mm.
like, we don't have them because guys like me and you can't seem to convince people that, they are a modality of treatment.
Mm.
But just lately, and I wanted to touch on this too. Uh, One of my caregivers in the cuddle therapy business got a chance to address the the good folks at the American Psychiatric Association. Remember them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And she
Traditional
managed.
toxic masculinity. Yeah. I remember them.
Yep, yep. She managed to make a little headway, at least, in that the kind of therapy that she provides is actually therapy.
Mm.
And not only is it actually therapy, but it's transferable, outside the realm of 'cause it's like it seemed to have an idea that this is something to uh, I guess improve things like dating and boundaries awareness, like getting people. In other words, the whole purpose is to get people to behave themselves a little better in
Mm.
mixed company. It's like, well, yeah, it does do that. I won't lie, and it's probably cheaper overall than traditional therapy for that. But it's like, forget that for a second.
Mm.
That's fine, but we're talking about people with really critical combinations of anxiety and touch deprivation.
Mm.
And that kind of thing kills people. I say, because traditional therapy is is so often ineffective for men. It mostly kills men, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, that's just one venue. It's just one modality, as
Mm.
they use the word modality. So, but it's starting to get a little play,
Mm.
and my hope is that, from there, right, the powers that be will start taking more time and give more credit, to modalities specific to men,
Mm.
and I mean, it goes beyond even things like, men's sheds as group therapy, right? I think I mentioned last year sometime on the podcast that, we also have things like equine therapy, animal
Mm.
therapy, but it's like big animal therapy, because you don't want to just be telling suicidal men to get a dog. For one thing, have a little sympathy for the dog,
Yeah.
because but for another thing, there's something about interaction and interplay with a like a living thing that's a lot bigger than you, which a horse
Mm.
is,
Yeah.
and being able to make a connection with it, and again, I believe, it's better probably that kind of therapy happen in with groups of men. Because
Mm.
how, I mean, how men are, especially, I grew up with this. Something, complicated and involved, like dealing with a horse, especially if you're going to, like I did, the thing I did with horses was work.
Mm.
We dealt with beef,
Mm,
But even just specifically for therapy, in groups, men watch each other, right?
mm,
And we uh, take cues from each other. It's great to work with a horse, but at that point, the only thing that's happening is you know, you're taking cues from the horse, and
mm,
hopefully, a good therapist. But still, just like a just two-way. And I really believe, one thing about men's uh, mental health support is for therapists not to be afraid, and not to be skeptical of letting us heal together, you
mm,
know, and to not use men like me, right, as some kind of model for how to get better,
mm.
right? Because what works for me, I have found, by and large, not very many other men that it works for.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And it's like
Mm.
it's time for everybody to just be okay with that, and just accept defeat. you
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's okay. It's like not some really suffering man not being able to sit down in a quiet office once a week, or if they're lucky once a week, if they've got good insurance, and take 50 minutes of that hour and just try to talk out everything that's wrong and everything that's right. I mean, it wouldn't have helped me.
Mm.
I think if that's all there had been for me in the beginning, this conversation wouldn't even be taking place. Because it wouldn't have
Yeah.
been enough, and the fact that eventually it was a big part of it, before I got to meet all you lovely people who are in my life now, it honestly, it was, lots of 12-step meetings,
Mm,
which were groups of mostly men, a sponsor, and one therapist, just
mm.
one, right? But that makes me the exception, it's
Yeah.
not supposed to work that way for men, and
Mm.
it doesn't most of the time.
No.
But what we're talking about, like group modalities and the kind of the background and training and dedication, that again, even that kind of touch therapy,
Mm.
really, it's real expensive, to do it properly. It costs big money, right?
Yeah.
And to make it happen so that it doesn't, devolve into a mess, right? Again, it takes money, you know,
Yeah.
and it takes support. It takes, uh, good, serviceable research, right?
Yeah.
And for big brains to take that research and sit down and, put together a plan, right? So as to make it happen, right? One
Mm.
thing, like I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, over here in America, in the between the court system and social services and the medical industry, they cooked up this plan, right? So that
Mm.
they was going to sober up all the drunks, right, and clean out all the addicts, and they were going to put the hospitals in charge, you know, and
Mm.
the medical groups. They were going to put them into. Here you go, here's like a ghastly amount of money,
Mm.
and all of the manpower and resources you could ask for. Take this, and it was mostly about get the drunks off the road and the dope heads off the street, you know.
Mm.
And here we are, like 40 years later, right? I don't know if you've seen pictures of San Francisco and you know a lot of
It's bad enough in
Seattle
Philly.
and Portland, Philadelphia, Jesus, Philadelphia, and a lot of like just sections of the South. It's not even down to just one town or city. There's ghost towns there, abandoned. They're
Mm.
populated entirely by addicts and alcoholics, and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
So I would have to say, that project failed. You
Yeah.
know, but it's like whenever you say things like that, they say, well, okay, what do you got? And
Mm,
rightly so. But now
yeah.
we're getting to the place where we've got something,
Mm,
but it ain't gonna be cheap,
no,
and
certainly isn't.
it won't be quick, right? And it has to, uh, there a supply has to be generated. When I say
Mm,
supply, we're talking about human capital, people who can
mm,
do the kind of work that um, oh, my men's group therapist Becky can do. My
mm,
my trauma therapist Shelley. I mean, these are like completely remarkable and renegade people. They don't color inside the line, right?
mm,
So it's like the system has to create bigger lines,
mm.
because these people, there need to be more of them, right? And they need to be seen as more than just a lone voice in the wilderness, right? They need,
Yeah.
and in their language, they need to be normalized. This has to be the uh, the stock in trade of mental health support for men. These kind
Mm,
of people,
yeah.
my various, I cuddle therapist because that's the title, but uh, this is a brand of you know bi-directional touch therapy.
Mm,
And like I said, it ain't cheap. You know, there's about a million different ways for it to go haywire, even with good
mm,
intention. And because it's unregulated and unprotected, anybody can do it. And so, there's that group of people that are doing it
yeah.
properly. And then there's, the other like 70% who are just making some extra money. Now, what does that sound
Mm,
like?
yeah.
People doing touch therapy for some extra money. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it's like. So
Yeah.
it's like to like wipe all that off and say, no, you know, this is an actual path to mental health and well-being, but it can't just be done any old way.
Yeah.
you know. And the insurance companies will stand right up and say, "Damn right, it's not going to be done any old way because we won't pay for
Yeah.
it." so,
Yeah.
so
Uh,
anyway, you want to talk about the bear?
we address the bear in the room. Oh,
Sure, let's hear it.
oh God, what a load of old nonsense that is, eh?
Yeah.
It's it's playing on women's fears for a start, no
Mm,
matter if it's irrational or otherwise. You
right.
know, you start looking into the statistics of it all, and it's like less than 1% of the total population
Yeah.
of men are responsible for
Mhm.
all the crimes of that nature against
Right.
women.
Right.
So you try explaining to women, because they love throwing out all these statistics, the women that are pro bear, and you then tell them, oh, it's less than 1%. Well, I don't believe that, and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Um, the women that, excuse me, that would choose the man have generally been through some pretty hairy stuff. I mean,
Right.
several of them that I talked to on TikTok.
Right.
There's one that's very, very lucky to be alive. I wish we could have her on here because she'd be amazing to interview. And she said, several years ago I would have been choosing the bear, but today I choose the man because I've done the work I think I need to do to heal myself. But obviously, earlier on we were talking about having women in men's spaces.
Mhm.
Okay, and this all ties in. If we honestly believe as a society that men are so dangerous that women would rather be alone in the woods with a wild animal that you can't communicate with, so you can't understand what it's thinking or anything else. But if men are so dangerous that women would rather be alone with a bear, but they're also advocating that women and girls should be in men's spaces because men's spaces are that misogynistic and awful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've made on this on TikTok. Like, make this one make sense to me, please, people, because we've got two different things here, and it's doing men's mental health no good at all.
No, no, it's causing, like I said, it's causing the kind of isolation and, again, a little more esoteric language, disconnection,
Mm,
that uh, it causes even fairly stable men to become at least a little more dangerous to themselves and everyone else.
mm,
And uh, if I don't know, it's like, and I've said this before, not here, but in other places, like I wish that humans were the kind of species where the males, did not require exclusive company with other males in order to develop. Because yes,
mm,
things would be much simpler then.
yeah.
We do not live in that world, and we are not that kind of creature. We never
Mm,
were. I mean
yeah.
that's one thing that history resolves pretty nicely is that men who can't be men among men, are they historically, those cultures don't exist anymore because they're all gone.
Yeah.
So and there's very little modern comparison, but as to what they're expecting from the I guess, coeducational or inclusive space methodology is that, they propose to be part of these traditionally men's spaces. And
Mm,
for the men to somehow, I guess, maintain their man among menness and, be that way with them too,
mm,
which kind of comes out to treating them like men.
mm,
And, I'm just one guy, and I'm a guy, but I hear tell that some women don't care for being treated like a guy too much.
no.
I mean, I don't think they like to be coddled or catered to you know, uh, or kowtowed to or simped
Mm,
to. But at the same time, it's unwise to assume that, a group of men don't have to adjust to the presence of women,
mm.
you know. I
Well,
mean,
that
it's one
tends to
of those
happen
things.
automatically.
I'm sorry.
That
What?
tends to happen automatically.
It does. But again, there's a reason for it because there are women, who kind of thrive in that environment. They
Mm,
like to be one of the guys. It's just that
mm,
they're not the majority, right?
mm,
You know, they just kind of expect and appreciate, uh, a group of men, that can see her as a woman and not, sexually or anything, but just to know that, they're different, right?
mm,
And be able to appreciate that. But if you ignore something, that's not appreciating it. And it's
mm,
like, then it breaks down into this real, you know, simple language. Like, look, men and women are of necessity not the same critter,
mm,
and we never have been. And because we are distant ancestors, maybe stupidly, flew the perch of natural selection, we don't run our behavior on a script anymore.
yeah.
I tell people it's like going from, you know, uh, pre-programmed core memory to a hard drive and an operating system with applications. It's different,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
and because it's different, you got to work with it different. So we did that, you know.
yeah.
So now, our evolution and our evolutionary stability doesn't depend on what's going on in our genes or our gonads. It depends on what's going on up here and here.
Yeah.
I say, our choices are simple. We either take that seriously or we don't. If we do, then we continue as a species. If we don't, again, no guarantee that we belong here.
Yeah.
Maybe we're an evolutionary dead end. And if we are, the universe is going to say, so what?
Yeah.
We live in a we live in a universe that is almost entirely either indifferent or actively hostile to human life.
Yeah.
But anyway, uh, I guess we ought to try to wrap this up. Do you have any
Yeah.
final thoughts, sir?
Just it's good to be back, I think. And it's really, really funny because my other half has been saying to me for a good 4 weeks, 5 weeks now, when are you gonna get back on the podcast? I think she kind of misses it. I think that's the
Yeah.
weird thing.
Mhm.
That was sort of the background to her going to bed on a Sunday night, was us two sitting down and having a slightly obscure but serious conversation.
Fair enough.
So yeah,
All right.
it's good to be back doing it, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. And I guess if I have a final thought, and this pertains to the bear lady, because the popular response clapback, when they get accused of being insane, is that oh no, at the end of the day, the whole thing is just an empathy test for men.
Mm,
I said, well, I have a little experience in uh, developing and checking on my level of empathy. And if I were tasked with designing an empathy test, I would not do it
no,
that way. I would not, I
no,
mean, I get the concept, I do, but again, it looks good on paper, but it never worked in real time. And it
no.
didn't, I mean, it did not work under that design. It did something else. It just wasn't that.
Yeah,
So to all the bear ladies out there, I even if I concede to you it was all just really an empathy test, it failed outright.
yeah,
It was entirely ineffective and it measured nothing.
yeah.
So anyway, other than that, yeah, I am really glad to be back too, and I really appreciate checking in with you and hearing your dulcet voice and all of your all of your adventures and misadventures. And maybe we ought to do this again next week. I don't want to make long-term promises, but the
Yeah.
way things have been going, but I think if you're game, maybe we can do this again next Thursday.
We can certainly try. Obviously, work's work. We
Right.
just got lucky that we got lucky tonight because they sent me here to park up rather than me traveling another 70 miles, in which case I wouldn't have gotten off the road that long ago. So, we're kind of lucky, kind of lucky. There is a
Yeah.
couple of things I need to
Go
discuss with
ahead.
you at the end
Okay.
of the cast.
Okay.
But we'll do that, just you and I.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for being here. And we are back. And thanks everybody for listening. And we will see you all again next time. Thank you.
Bye.